Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm very excited to introduce my new work, Solution for Black in Classical Slav Main Line. Before we are moving on with material, I would like to remind you, if you enjoy my work, you want to see more videos, please don't forget to subscribe, like, hit notification button and leave the comments under my videos. I'm trying to answer every single one of them. Okay, so guys, time to move on with material. So today we're gonna talk about Classical Slav. What does it mean, Classical Slav? So that's a initial position of the Slav. Now after knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, d takes c4. That's a Classical Slav. It's one of the three solid choices for black. So there is as well e6, which indicates semi-Slav. Also there is a move a6, which is so-called Chebanenko variation, and all three systems basically considered to be very good, playable, reliable openings for black. Now, my choice in this case, DC4, the same as my Grandmaster repertoire book, Classical Slav, released in 2014, but the choice in the main line will be a little bit different. So what is the main line? So I consider this position the main line, and now black has a choice of several variations here. Usually the most popular one is bishop f5. Then, in my opinion, the most ambitious for white and the most dangerous move knight e5. There is a positional e3, but I feel like that's kind of like easier to handle just if you study the theory. But after knight e5, there is a choice between playing e6, which runs into f3 with ideas e4 and so on. Now, and the line, finally, knight bd7, knight c4, move queen c7 that I recommended in my book, so-called Morozevich variation. And there is also knight b6, which is considered to be pretty solid. I don't know if there is an official name. I always called it Chinese variation because many Chinese players, strong grandmasters from my generation, played this line. Now, it goes without saying that instead of bishop f5, there are moves like knight a6, bishop g4 that considered to be favorable for white, but still in some way playable. So this time we have a move e6. That's my solution. It's a well-known move. Played by many strong grandmasters. It's hard for me to indicate a specific guy here that you can study. It's rather a lot of GMs. And in this position, white basically has the main choices between e3 and e4, but on the same hand, on the same side, like I want to cover some alternatives, and two main alternatives will be g3. Well, which is easily solved after c5, so there are a lot of games, but it's a little bit surprising for Slav defense. Like we first played c6 and then we come with c5, so the idea knight c6, and basically black very easily solves all the problems. Now another move is bishop g5, and here I was surprised to discover that c5 works as well, and it looks pretty good instead of entering some complicated lines. Only sixth choice according to the database, but looks just great. And the main point is that after e3 we take on d4, and if he takes e4 we basically transpose to the main line of our e6 system where white plays e3. Now white can try knight d4, but then h6, bishop h4, and we just develop bishop e7, bishop c4, and then a very important idea to remember, bishop d7 followed by knight c6, and I don't think white has too many resources to pose any serious problems here. So that was move bishop g5, which is after c5 seems like quite an easy play. Now finally we are moving to two top choices. So one is e4. In this case we respond with bishop b4, very important. Now once again serious crossroad with the main move being e5. Now there is also queen c2. There is this type of play where we respond b5, and it's a classical position with compensation, bishop e2, bishop b7, castle a6. So it's pretty thematic for this kind of like Slav positions. It's also, for me personally, it resembles Catalan a little bit, sacrificing pawn c4 and then playing for initiative. So this is one line. Now we're gonna have also bishop g5. Bishop g5 move. In this case, we should play bishop takes c3, bc3, queen a5, and e5, knight e4. So that's considered to be a reliable line for black. I don't think there are any surprises. So I just everything is covered in details here, and you will get a very detailed coverage of this variation. So now bishop g5. I was a little bit surprised discovering how bishop c4 might be playable. So the idea to sacrifice pawn, and actually it's two pawn sacrifice, and it's in some way it's a similar idea like we have in Vienna variation. And as always, black shouldn't capture on c3, so capturing second pawn very, very dangerous. So we just retreat knight f6, and then just white try to develop long-term initiative, whether it's queen e2 or bishop g5 and so on. Actually not so easy, and there is some danger, but I think with precise knowledge, everything is fine for black. It's rather remarkably, I notice how computers nowadays actually pretty much like white position, meaning that like it's always around equal, while let's say 10 years, 15 years ago, it would be always like no compensation for the pawn, but now just long-term compensation. It's a very interesting play for white here, but I mean black is basically healthy pawn up and just needs to know some defensive ideas. Now e5 is the main move. Here we have a line knight d5, very important. Unfortunately for black, knight a4 basically has been put under serious question. After queen c2, queen a5, white can actually capture on a4. Bishop c3, play king d1. And after bishop b4, play bishop c4. And it appears that king is actually not so bad here, can go on e2 if necessary. Meanwhile, queen g4 is coming, and white has a very dangerous initiative. So this line is not good. So we don't play knight a4, instead we go knight d5. And after bishop d2 or queen c2, we just play b5. And here we have a very complicated play, but we are pawn up. We have something to suffer for, at least in the beginning. I found quite a lot of interesting ideas for black. Overall, seems like black is doing really, really good in this variation. Remarkable idea how black can take over in many lines after castling, and white mobilizing his piece on king side. Suddenly f6 or 5 comes, and basically changes the picture, and black takes over. So very, very interesting line. I know everyone is a little bit concerned about these positions because it's really white has initiative in the beginning, and well, it's clear white has to have something for being pawned down. And you need to know very, very precise how to react in some lines. But overall, if you know the theory, it's a good variation. It's a good variation for black. Now, so we talked about e4 and finally e3. I would say probably the most popular line, kind of like safe approach, although the position will be still quite complicated. So after c5, bishop c4. Now the move order is very important, so I explained this in my file. So not knight c6, we start cd4. He can of course like a little bit extra options, knight d4, queen d4, but they're pretty harmless. So e4, and then again very important to start with knight c6, not bishop e7, which would allow like this variation. I found this variation a little bit annoying, even though computers still show some solution. But from human point of view, I would say like why not to start knight c6, eliminate this idea of knight e5, and just move with the main line. So here we got a very interesting position. I would say a classical thematic position with isolated pawn for white. The only thing, there is extra move a4, and if you scroll back, if you rewind, so we played c6, c5 at some point. So we wasted tempo. Why use this tempo for playing a4 move, which is not exactly the most desirable move, because now we have b4 square, which is very important. We have control over b4 square, so in many lines knight b4, some lines bishop b4. So it's I think overall it's a very interesting play. White has a lot of setups right now. It could be queen e2, rook e1, bishop f4, bishop g5. Always have to deal with d5, but all these breaks with d5, they usually are pretty harmless because we always have b4 square available for our pieces. And in general, I feel like with solid knowledge here, it's a very good system for black. For some players, it might be a very interesting news to hear that this line is actually playable. I know classical Slav players, they kind of like to change. They play bishop f5, and then maybe they are not happy. At least I have witnessed this personally. But this line looks like really solid, reliable for black. Now, obviously, if white allows some chances in the positions, playing pawn down, so we can take over. And overall, it can actually improve your strategical understanding. So here you're playing against isolated pawn. If you enjoy such a positions, and maybe not, so the time to study those positions. And overall, once again, I was pleasantly surprised that black is doing really well in this variation, and that's my idea, to play e6, avoid maybe some really sharp lines in classical Slav main variation, and have a very solid, reliable position. Hopefully you enjoyed, and you know, guys, well, if you will be interested in downloading the very detailed PGN file, please head over to my webpage ask-avrukh.com, and there you can find and download PGN file. Now, if you are not interested, so I get maybe you cannot afford buying, so then you got some ideas. You can build your own file, or maybe just get some interesting ideas and some thoughts in this opening, maybe even for white pieces. Thanks for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you once again with my new videos.